Congressional record published Thursday, June 19, 2025. The Senate convened on Wednesday, June 18, 2025, at 11 a.m., with President pro tempore Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa presiding. The session opened with a prayer by Chaplain Dr. Barry C. Black, who called for hope, peace, humility, integrity, mutual respect, and love to guide senators and their staff in service to the nation. The Senate then recited the Pledge of Allegiance, reaffirming loyalty to the flag and the Republic. Following morning business, the Senate entered executive session to consider nominations. The nomination of Rodney Scott from Oklahoma to be Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection was read. Senator Grassley addressed the chamber on whistleblower protections, emphasizing their vital role in government oversight. He revealed whistleblower disclosures involving politically motivated investigations into President Donald Trump, including the Arctic frost case initiated by anti-Trump FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors. Senator Grassley pledged to continue uncovering facts related to these matters. The House of Representatives was not in session on June 18 and is scheduled to meet next on Friday, June 20. Senator John Thune, a Republican from South Dakota and Majority Leader, spoke about the Senate Finance Committee's release of tax legislation aimed at permanently extending the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions. He highlighted that without action, many families face significant tax increases starting in 2026. The bill would maintain lower tax rates, increase the child tax credit by an additional $200 permanently, and extend business tax reforms that have supported economic growth, job creation, and wage increases. Senator Thune expressed optimism about delivering permanent tax relief for American workers and businesses. Later, the Senate discussed the U.S. regulatory process for pesticide approvals. A senator cautioned against undermining the current system, which sets global standards and supports U.S. agricultural competitiveness. Overregulation was identified as a greater threat to economic progress than lack of regulation. Senator Thune also addressed a recent confrontation involving Senator Alex Padilla, a Democrat from California, during an immigration and customs enforcement briefing. He urged elected officials to take responsibility for their actions and criticized disruptions of official events. At the same time, he condemned the disrespectful treatment of Senator Padilla when removed from the briefing room. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat from New York, criticized what he called the MAGA Supreme Court majority for neglecting protections against discrimination, particularly targeting transgender Americans. He pledged to continue fighting for the rights of all citizens. Senator Thom Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina, spoke about an Afghan interpreter detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in California. He recounted efforts to evacuate Afghan allies during the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and urged recognition of this man's service by releasing him from detention for proper immigration evaluation. A Democratic senator addressed a recent Congressional Budget Office report on the Republican Big Beautiful Bill, warning it would add $3.4 trillion to the national debt and harm working families while benefiting billionaires. The senator criticized healthcare cuts, clean energy job losses, and gun safety rollbacks included in the bill. In the House of Representatives, a speaker condemned Republican provisions removing regulations and background checks on silencers, shotguns, and rifles. The speaker vowed to fight these changes vigorously and criticized efforts to undermine judicial independence through pay-to-play injunction requirements. Fiscal concerns were raised over permanent tax cuts favoring the ultra-rich at the expense of future generations. Attention was given to a classified briefing requested amid ongoing Middle East conflict, with concerns for U.S. troops and citizens abroad. Senator John Barrasso, a Republican from Wyoming, requested unanimous consent to waive quorum calls for a vote on Rodney Scott's nomination as CBP Commissioner. The Senate voted 50 yea to 46 nay to end debate on his nomination. The Senate confirmed Olivia Trusty of Maryland for reappointment to the Federal Communications Commission, with 53 yea votes to 45 nay votes. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, a Democrat from Nevada, led unanimous consent requests to discharge committees and consider several bills en bloc. These included legislation extending conservation programs for the Colorado River Basin, improving access to Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument in Maine, reauthorizing Secure Rural Schools funding through 2026, adjusting Big Bend National Park boundaries in Texas, and amending Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act provisions. The Senate passed amendments allowing land acquisition for national monuments without eminent domain, and permitting certain recreational activities consistent with management plans. Public education efforts involving local communities and tribal governments were emphasized. Senator Cortez Masto also highlighted the Apex Area Technical Corrections Act, benefiting Nevada's Apex Industrial Park, by streamlining permitting authority to support economic growth. Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican from Alaska, praised bipartisan efforts on bills benefiting Alaska Natives by protecting eligibility for federal assistance programs and restoring land titles. Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat from Oregon, opposed Rodney Scott's nomination due to allegations of involvement in covering up a death in Border Patrol custody in 2010. He submitted reports from the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General, detailing investigations into the incident where Anastasio Hernandez Rojas died after being restrained by agents. The Senate reviewed detailed findings showing use of force was within policy but acknowledged concerns about accountability and leadership at Customs and Border Protection. Senator Marsha Blackburn, a Republican from Tennessee, addressed protests in Los Angeles following ICE arrests of criminal illegal aliens. She criticized California officials for condemning law enforcement actions and condemned violent protests that ensued. Senator Blackburn introduced legislation to empower state and local law enforcement to assist federal immigration enforcement and expedite deportations. Senator Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat from Maryland, explained his vote against the Genius Act regulating cryptocurrency. He cited inadequate protections against illicit activities and blocked amendments addressing President Trump's crypto-related conflicts of interest. Senators honored milestones including the 100th anniversary of Frank Pepe Pizzeria Napolitana in Connecticut, and recognized volunteer firefighter Chris McGinnis from Montana for his dedicated service. The Senate received committee reports on international security resolutions condemning Hamas attacks on Israel and promoting cooperation on quantum science, critical minerals mapping, nuclear strategy, and countering adversarial nations alliances. Senator Tammy Baldwin, a Democrat from Wisconsin, paid tribute to Mark A. Monet on his retirement as Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee for his leadership in research and education equity. Several ambassadorial nominations were presented with detailed disclosures of political contributions by nominees and their families. New bills introduced covered topics including mandatory funding for healthy food initiatives, rail carrier service standards, infrastructure improvements at Dyess Air Force Base, immigration status adjustments, protections for students at proprietary institutions, environmental conservation, election worker protections, caps on foreign student enrollment, agricultural definitions, commercial vehicle operator testing penalties for blocking public roads, oversight of foreign investment, artificial intelligence in financial services, opioid disorder programs, coastal observation systems tax proposals, monarch butterfly, conservation tax filing status for abused spouses, AUKUS, partnership improvements, father inclusion during pregnancy campaigns, post-government employment, conflict of interest rules, repeal of Syria Civilian Protection Act, Veterans Health Access, and resolutions introduced reaffirmed U.S. commitments to refugee safety worldwide, condemned anti-Semitic attacks including recent violence in Boulder, Colorado, celebrated Juneteenth National Independence Day, supported NATO priorities ahead of the Hague Summit, recognized National Pollinator Week, honored law enforcement professionals, designated National Public Works Week, commemorated C-SPAN's 39th anniversary, remembered victims of the Pulse nightclub attack, supported World Sickle Cell Awareness Day, and expressed support. The Senate recognized World Refugee Day and highlighted global displacement crises affecting over 123 million people worldwide. It condemned refugee admission suspensions under Executive Order 14,163, issued by President Donald Trump in January 2025. The Senate called for lifting the suspension to protect vulnerable populations fleeing conflict and persecution. A resolution passed urging comprehensive refugee policies aligned with humanitarian principles and international obligations. It called upon President Trump and key officials to restore refugee resettlement programs fully. The Senate also passed resolutions supporting pollinator conservation amid threats to native species essential for agriculture and ecosystems. Senator Maria Cantwell, a Democrat from Washington state, warned against extending deadlines allowing Chinese control over TikTok. She cited national security risks from misinformation campaigns aligned with foreign adversaries' interests. She urged enforcement of laws requiring transfer of TikTok ownership to U.S. entities. The Senate confirmed Olivia Trusty as FCC Commissioner and Rodney Scott as CBP Commissioner, following close votes reflecting partisan divisions over qualifications and past conduct. Senator Lisa Murkowski emphasized bipartisan cooperation on cybersecurity infrastructure, while Senator Cory Booker advocated comprehensive immigration reform recognizing immigrant contributions. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer outlined infrastructure modernization efforts focused on transportation and rural broadband expansion. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell expressed fiscal concerns, urging targeted investments. Senator Elizabeth Warren introduced consumer protection legislation targeting predatory lending practices. The Senate unanimously passed a resolution supporting veterans' health care improvements. In the House of Representatives, Speaker Kevin McCarthy praised recent trade negotiations securing fair agreements benefiting American workers. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called for swift climate action investing in renewable energy. Debates on education funding featured Representative Virginia Foxx advocating school choice and accountability, while Representative Bobby Scott supported increased federal support for public schools. A resolution condemning hate crimes passed with overwhelming support. Both chambers engaged in ongoing debates across party lines on security, economic policy, immigration reform, social issues, and governance transparency. Thanks for listening. The full source material for this summary is in the description below.